Alright, so we got an interesting little task to go ahead and execute on today. My brother is rebuilding a lovely little Allis Chalmers FT20 forklift. I think it's an FT20. And the original steering wheel is horrendously problematic on it. So he got a replacement steering wheel. Unfortunately, new steering wheel has a different setup than old steering wheel does. So new steering wheel is set up with a taper, and old steering wheel was set up with a spline interface, which you can see pretty clearly over here. So the way it works out, the smooth section of the hub goes on first, so it's going to go like this, and then the spline section is there. And my task is to go through and machine this setup so that there is a taper. Basically, we're going to use this as an adapter, and I have to set up my lathe to go ahead and do that. So what he sent me is a reamer with the right taper and the hub piece, which I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to mount this to machine the taper on it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The first step I need to do is I need to go ahead and set the taper of the reamer on my lathe. So the way that I've set this up is I have the compound slide set at an angle. I eyeballed this approximately close enough, and then I zeroed out the gauge on this end of the reamer. And the idea is that if the reamer starts to get closer to me, the needle will come towards me. If the reamer is getting further away from me, the needle will fall off, and then I will be able to tell which way I need to adjust the compound slide so that I can get the correct taper over the length. And honestly, this isn't going to need to be super accurate. I'm going to get as close as I can, and then we're just going to lock the slide, and then we'll be able to set up our tooling, and we'll be able to cut this taper appropriately. So that's the game plan. I've had to set this up so that my compound doesn't hit with the tailstock, and I've got good clearance. I have a back gear lathe, and the way that I have it set up right now, I'm in back gear so that the spindle is locked, and that's going to keep the reamer blade horizontal so that I can follow the tooth and maintain the taper cut on there. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to go ahead and get that set up, and I'm going to fuss with this for a while, and then we'll bring you back once we've got like a good reading, because I can almost guarantee you that my eyeballing is probably not good enough. Although, you know, just right out the gate, I'm only off by a few thou, so I got pretty close by doing it eyeball wise. Just for giggles, let's see how far off this got. My experience with matching tapers in the past is that this can be very fussy to get it right. So we're out about 10 thou. We're probably out about 30 thou over the length, which, you know, for an eyeball, I'm not going to be able to get the whole length of stroke. I might have to reset this slightly. Anyway, we'll be back. It's not far off. It's pretty close, and we'll go from there. Right, so we're back here at the lathe, and we've set everything up, and I've got the taper set to where I want it to be, and I'm just going to kind of run it down. And I'm happy, I think, with where this is at right now. I've got very small amounts of run out over the entire stroke here, and I think this is going to be just an absolutely great result. So by the time I get all the way to the end, I still have less than a thou of realistic run out. So that's in my book, that's more than good enough for what we're doing here for a steering wheel. We're going to cut the taper on that basis. So I'm going to lock down the saddle, do one more check, and then we're going to move on to trying to get that piece of steering wheel hub chucked up in the lathe and go from there. We're just here at the lathe, and I'm taking down the OD from raw stock, and as far as we can, or at least we're going to go as far as we can on the lathe here, and then we're going to flip this around, and that's just because this is raw cold formed bar. We're going to flip it around, rechuck it, and then we'll cut a socket or a spigot for our steering wheel block to slip over, and then we'll bore a hole all the way through, and then we're just going to use a 1/2 inch draw bolt to hold it on there, and that's what's going to allow us to machine our taper, which is probably going to be a pretty atrocious job, and I'm going to have to change one of my tool holders. This is a fine tip carbide cutting tool that I use for most of the stuff on my lathe because the cutting force is lower. So we're going to stop that right about there. Going to pull that back tension and then draw that back. Beautiful. I am going to go ahead and swap out my tool post, put a little chamfer on there, and that's just so I don't nick myself with it. I do like to do that. I keep that right there for exactly that purpose. We'll just touch that a little bit, and that's done. Beautiful. And then we'll flip that around, and then we'll machine a ledge. then what we're going to do is we're just going to mark it. And what we'll do is we'll mark it basically here on the fixture, like that, and we'll mark that jaw, and then it'll go back in the same way. Alright, moment of truth here. Okay, we need to take down more. Better move that before it falls. Boy, that taper feels pretty good, actually. Honestly, there's no wiggle in it. That's really good. How far do we have to go? Right now we're sticking up like a huge amount, so we're going to have to go down quite a bit in diameter to get there. But yeah, that is really good. So what we'll do, let's see here. What we can do real quick is we can go on, stick that back in there. Okay, so we'll measure it. We'll measure the diameter right about there. And we'll try and figure out approximately how much we got to take off, because it's probably quite a bit. And honestly, if we measure the diameter at the bottom of the black mark before it gets shiny, that's going to give us a pretty good indicator as to where we actually want it to sit, because we want it to be just a little bit proud of that surface. So we'll do this on both sides. There we go. And that'll get us what we need right there. So we'll measure that, and then we'll go back to machining more taper. Alright, well, it's in there. I think I might have gone maybe a scooch too far. I don't know. We're going to pop it out of the fixture. It's done now. It's hard to tell. It is, I don't know if it's a little bit proud or if it's a little bit under proud, which that's my fault. Probably should have stopped 1/5 cut sooner. I was trying to get it as close as possible. It's my bad. Moved in somewhat big jumps there at the end, so we'll get this out of the jig, and then we'll throw it in there, and then I guess we'll go from there. Send it back to Uncle Jules for regular use. Alright, well, it turns out that we got it just about perfect. It's kind of probably hard to see on the GoPro, but yeah, it's sticking up proud just a little bit. We did a good job here. Alright, so here we are with the steering wheel sitting here, and the final part, I've deburred it slightly. Looking really good, honestly. I'm genuinely impressed with how concentric everything ended up, considering that the setup wasn't super awesome. But if we take this and we drop it in here, it sits just a little bit proud, and I'm very happy with that. That should pull in nicely when Uncle Jules goes ahead and pulls the steering wheel right on. And if we take it and we flip it over and we look at the other side, it's basically fitting in the steering wheel perfectly. Very nice and concentric. I'm genuinely happy with the outcome there. So I think this was a resounding success. That is done. We'll actually probably put a small piece of tape on there to keep it from falling out, getting crushed in shipment. But overall, very, very pleased with the outcome. So we'll get this packed up and mailed back to Uncle Jules so he can carry on with his wonderful little forklift project.